How'd your day go?
Yeah, the defense I thought did well. Offense, I don't think we put in the work before we got to practice, and it shows up.
Brian Ward had some pretty aggressive goals, sacks, and takeaways, and Southern Utah, their style maybe doesn't lend itself to that as much. But what do you think about those things moving forward and against Oklahoma State?
Yeah, I think when you play with that style, you're either going to hit those goals or your style of play is going to alter how a team plays their normal style of play. So if teams don't want to play their normal style of play because of the pressure, right, then obviously those goals will be lesser than what are expected if people are adapting and trying to limit what they do offensively. So I think it just depends on who you play and how many teams don't completely change their style of play when they play us. And when they do change their style of play, our theory is we already got you to change what you do, so we feel like we already have an advantage.
Is it tougher to dial in a game plan on that part of it, like pressuring the three quarterbacks and they're all different?
Not really. I think it's more the identity of the coordinator, and if there were different quarterbacks that were drastically different. None of these guys are a wildcat slash runner. None of these guys are a super young dude who can throw it 70 yards. Right, they're all very similar. They're savvy, they're smart, they have a good awareness to them. Right, they're similar players, which is why they probably played all three of them, is they're trying to figure out under the lights which one is the best, produces the best.
Kenny, now that you're at Wednesday, what's the message to the guys here as you get closer to Saturday?
It's mental. Who puts in the mental work to watch the film and get better? Right now, I just told the guys, we got to find some leaders on offense. By defense, we have some leaders. We got to find some leaders on offense that get people together to put in the work outside of the building. And that's part of being in year one, is setting the standard of, we can only be with the guys 20 hours a week, right? 20 hours a week is not going to win us football games. What are they going to do outside of those 20 hours without us as a football team? Who's going to set the standard of what that looks like? That's the challenge.
You're taking where Jaden is now a couple days before he got another start.
Yeah, he's getting better every day. Obviously, this defense is completely different, so there's a lot of growth. Every time you see a picture, it's going to be different. And so really has 1 week to get ready for something he's never seen. So really, really tough task for a freshman.
We saw Cam and DeCarlos together in I formation on Thursday. What sort of flexibility does that give you, having those two guys on the field together at the same time?
Yeah, it just gives you two guys who can run the football from underneath sets. So your outside perimeter runs and your interior runs are both being run by guys who carry the football. So a little more versatility there. But we'll be different multiple weeks on our goal line calls. Very rarely will you see the same thing back-to-back weeks. That's kind of what we do. And it's just a guessing game in terms of what we do that week for us. And so it'll change every week.
Go against a guy like Mike Gundy. Do you have any past history with Mike?
I don't. I've met him a couple times. He won't remember me. He's one of the legends, I would say, in this profession. He's obviously been doing it a long time at the same place. Just shows the consistency he's had. And the one thing about his teams is they play hard, they play smart, and he always wins. It sounds simple, but he always wins. I think 2 years ago they were one of the best defenses in the nation, right? 2 to 3 years ago. And that was conflicting to his normal style when he had the #1 offense in the country, I think 5 years ago. So I think his ability to adapt to personnel, his ability to change with the game. There was a time he was a power run guy, right? Under center power I with Les Miles. He was the OC, and he adapted to essentially air raid, right? And Mike Urich hired a guy from Schippenberg and ran this open set and changed. Then he changed defenses and went to a 3 down front, different style, hired a guy from Duke. So when you look at his history, he's willing to adapt and change. And I think in college football, I think that's the key to success. And he's been willing to do that at, I think, one of the higher levels amongst head coaches, and that's why he's had his job and done such a great job for so long.
Coach, you talked about obviously the leaders on defense, but just like the chemistry they seem to have, and the leadership you have, the communication. From the beginning of fall camp through game one, just how do you feel the defense as a group has grown?
Oh, the longer you play together, the better you get. It's that simple. The more returners you have, the better you are, for the most part, right? Or guys that have played on the same team together, there's an advantage. Two guys that played together, if they transfer together, they're going to have a chemistry together. Two guys that didn't are going to have to learn that chemistry through games. So I think through games, they should naturally get more comfortable with each other, build more trust, and that should get better.
What do you like about having a young, freshman quarterback, just one start under his belt so far? What's nice about that heading into this week 2 matchup? Is there anything that really stands out about having a young mind like that?
Yeah, I mean, it forces us to not put too much on his plate. It really challenges us to create schemes that are sound, but schemes that allow him to play fast, right? And try not to make him think about all the other stuff and just let him go play football. So I actually like that part, that we have to really challenge ourselves to find the simplest way to be as schematically sound and create numbers, leverage, and grass for our guys as possible. And it's hard to do both. It's hard to be simple and create leverages, right? It's easy to be complicated and create leverages because you can check into good plays. But when you want to, keep things simple, how can you get into those calls that can get you the best leverages without being complex for a young guy?
Would you say to a certain point that making it easier on the quarterback almost makes it easier on the team as a whole?
Mentally, to know what to do, yes.